Here. Councilmember Millman.
Here.
And Councilmember Taylor.
Here. Please join me for the flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I move to accept the agenda in order and content.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Any comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say, sorry, Councilmember Taylor?
Yeah, is this the consent calendar or no?
This is the agenda approval.
Okay. I would like to take item 8 and move it into general discussion.
All right, we'll take item number 8 and move it to become the last item on the agenda for this evening.
I move to accept the agenda as amended. Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none this evening, motion passes. We have no special presentations, and now we have public comment. We have no one in the room signed up for public comment. One comment was submitted in writing prior to the meeting. Council members can read that at their leisure. Motion for consent?
I move to accept the consent calendar as amended.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. So now we will move into our first business item number 12, first reading, waive second reading, and adoption of ordinance number 806, establishing a moratorium on accepting applications for detention and correctional institutions.
All right, good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I only have a few slides. This will be actually should be fairly short. As noted, this is a ordinance about a moratorium on accepting of applications for detention facilities. Real quick on the background, back in December, the Department of Homeland Security had released a pre-solicitation notice for a service provider to create a facility close to Seattle with proximity to the airport services providing comprehensive detention. As a result of this, it prompted a whole lot of activity, particularly from the jurisdictions that are near the SeaTac airport, with King County being just doing one here recently where they are passing similar moratoriums, establishing a pause on accepting permit applications associated with new or expanding of detention facilities. As I noted, Some of them include like Tukwila, SeaTac, Seattle, and a few others have all been involved with adopting these moratoriums. Do want to note real quick, because sometimes the question comes up, what's the distinction between a detention center versus like a correction center? And the main distinction is detention centers are primarily for holding individuals awaiting on legal proceedings, while correction centers is basically where the folks go after they've been convicted for rehabilitation. Although publicly owned type detention and correction facilities tend to be preempted by both state and federal rules as far as the zoning goes, privately owned and operated facilities don't have the same preemption. So we took a look through our zoning regulations, not that Woodinville's at risk or there's been any hint of a possibility of a detention facility because we are pretty far from the airport, but just to be on the safe side, we did take a look through our zoning regulations and did identify some inadequacies in there, and that we felt that it would be a good idea to potentially address those. So the moratorium was being presented here to maintain the status quo while we work on this and further evaluate this and then potentially do updates on it. Wanted just real quick, the way the RCW or moratorium processes work, the authority for this is in the RCWs, noted up here. I won't reread those again. But these will let local governments adopt moratoriums. And just to give an idea, because we have interim regulations that we've adopted earlier this year regarding inclusionary zoning, those follow similar process, but they do different things. In the case of a moratorium, we are temporarily doing a suspension of activity or a law. In this case, it would be an activity accepting permit applications until future consideration warrants lifting that suspension. And so the process for this is a public hearing is required either prior to or within 60 days. We do not have a public hearing scheduled for you tonight, but because we didn't have time to get noticing out on this, but we will get noticing out and we'll schedule a public hearing as a follow-up on this within the allowed amount of time. As far as then your action on this, if you do choose that you want to adopt it, if there is a vote of 5, then it can be adopted on an emergency basis and will take effect immediately. Or if there isn't 5 votes for it, then 4 votes would be enough to pass the ordinance. However, it would follow normal ordinance procedures and it wouldn't take effect until 5 days after publication. Do you want to know, just similar to the interim that we did for inclusionary zoning, this moratorium would be good for 6 months, but can be extended up to 1 year with a work plan. It also can be renewed 1 or more times for 6-month periods, as long as there are subsequent hearings and findings of facts that go with it. So, in summary, what this ordinance will do is it'll place a halt on accepting or processing any applications for a detention facility. And when we say detention facilities, we are including correction institutions, detention centers, immigration detention facilities, processing centers, holding facilities, staging areas for transportation of detained persons, and any commercial kitchen, commissary, or food preparation facility associated with detained people. So basically, it just puts a freeze in not accepting any applications that may have anything to do with detention or even correction facilities. And then during the 6 months, as I mentioned before, we have the ability to renew if we haven't completed the work that we're trying to do on that. Again, we'll do a hearing, findings that go along with it. And just to give you kind of the idea, the deadline that we'll need to hold the hearing by is June 5th, but I believe we're targeting to have the hearing at one of our May regular meetings. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and this is the recommended motion for you.
Questions? Councilmember Taylor.
A couple questions. How much time did you put into preparing this? I'm looking at cost benefit.
As far as the moratorium, you mean the presentation here or the moratorium?
The moratorium, what's the benefit that we're going to get out of this and the likelihood that such would come into Woodinville?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before, there hasn't been anything that has been proposed, but the moratorium does allow for a status quo to be kept in place and does give us time just in case anything should pop up. So, I mean, that's basically the advantage of the moratorium.
Yeah. Do you feel we're at threat of a detention center coming in?
I wouldn't use the word threat. I think it's a good idea for us to put a pause on potentially accepting anything so that we can evaluate and potentially update the codes.
Okay. because we don't have an airport here. Then I want to know, are there any side unintended consequences to this type of a moratorium? Does it preclude any other housing, temporary housing, or do we have code in place already for temporary housing? Wouldn't that apply to a detention center?
No, I mean, what you need to kind of define what you mean by temporary housing. If you're talking about a place just for people to live, that's different than a detention
opening up
facility.
A warehouse and people camping out on the floor or whatever. Would we have any jurisdiction on that?
Well,
I mean,
we have
could we
zoning
handle
that,
it with what we have?
so we have zoning regulations that talk about housing. That's different than detention or correction facilities. Detention and correction facilities actually have certain laws and stuff that usually apply to them that are different than what you would have for a typical like temporary housing situation, like for the homeless or something like that.
Okay, are we defining a correction facility or a detention temporary holding?
In the ordinance, it defines what the moratorium would apply for, and there is a definition applied to detention facilities. It is contained within the ordinance.
Thank you.
Councilmember Evans.
Thank you. I think this is a really important piece for us to take up. I know in Georgia there's a city called Social Circle that was surprised when a private business purchased a warehouse and they wanted to put up to 10,000 detainees in there. That is more than all the people that live in that city. And the city manager said that they had to lock it out and pause anything because their sewer plant and their water plant it was already operating at capacity. I feel like we could be here as well. Our warehouses here in the area were not designed for thousands of people to be living there 24/7. So it's really important that we put this pause in place and make sure that we have clear guidance as to how our warehouse space can be used.
Councilmember Taylor.
I just want to counter that a little bit. Every facility in the city has a occupancy and an occupancy permit. Is that correct?
Yeah, point of order. At this point, we're actually discussing the motion.
Yeah, well, we're not going to see thousands of people in this room, so.
The point is well taken. These are questions for staff at this time.
Yeah.
Do you have a question?
I move to pass the first reading, waive second reading, and adopt ordinance 806 as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second. Maker of the motion, you want to start the discussion?
Yeah, I will start the discussion. One of the things that my colleague brought up is that we're not currently under threat of a detention center being here. We also, at some point, were not under threat of a recycling center nor a trash dump being in the city. It happens very quickly. And in the instance that Council Member Evans discussed, it happens on a private basis. Therefore, there is nothing for the city to do except for do it via ordinance where we restrict that and make sure that there is nothing that comes in without our approval. If our residents were against a dump, how do you think they would feel about something that would be projected as a prison in the warehouse district, where we also do wine? I don't think that that's a good idea, so I will be voting for this ordinance.
Councilmember Millman.
Thank you. Yeah, so when we started discussing this, probably 2 weeks ago-ish, I've reached out to a lot of people, residents in town, and I didn't have anybody speak thinking this was a good idea to have a detention center in Woodinville. It's one of those things that probably on par with having a transfer station dump move to Woodinville. I don't think it's popular on end of the political spectrum, and I think taking this up with all the chaos that's going on right now and being proactive about it's a good idea. And there's no cost to us doing this, and I think it's work that we should do.
Thank you. One of the factors that persuaded me that this is something that we should discuss at the dais was just hearing examples of other cities who had facilities like this brought in, and the city had zero recourse to influence the location of these facilities. And much like Councilmember Millman, I spoke to community members, and I don't think there's any place in the city that individuals I spoke to would be happy with the location of a detention facility. And I think this is an excellent opportunity for us to review our codes and put our intentions, make sure that our strategic planning for the city is well represented in the ordinances and the codes that we have for the city, so that anyone who comes in and is looking to site a facility like this, it's very clear where we are and are not willing to have these things located in our community. And so I will be supporting this. I think it is wise to review our code, and this just gives us an opportunity to do it. I do not think that there is any imminent cause for concern for our residents, but that is why we are doing things in a proactive manner. Councilmember Millman?
Yeah, I just want to quickly add, when you look at the different zones in the city, I can't even imagine any zone that would be happy with a detention center, a correctional facility, or anything like that. You're not going to find any neighborhood that would welcome it. You're not going to find any tourist business zone. You're not going to find any area where there's wine tasting, retail going on. Nobody's going to want it downtown. We're trying to build a walkable, friendly tourist area. There's not a zone in here that anybody in any numbers is going to welcome that into our city. So I think this is a good proactive decision.
Do you have your hand up, Councilmember Taylor?
No, I'm ready to vote.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Roll call vote, please.
Thank you. Thank you. We will need a roll call vote for this.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Wise?
Yes.
Councilmember Millman?
Yes.
Mayor Arndt?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
No.
Deputy Mayor Randolph?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1. We are now moving on to business item 13, first reading of ordinance 807, amending Woodinville Municipal Code, allowing floor area of non-conforming single-family dwelling to be increased.
All right, good evening again. Just let my PowerPoint come up here. Again, not a lot of slides on this. This was something that originally came to the council last year, and you had put it on the Planning Commission's work plan. Planning Commission took a look at it and had forwarded a recommendation, which is included in your packet. It was simple enough that we also did prepare an ordinance for the first reading on this tonight as well. Just a quick background, table 2121-050, which lists our uses and the zones where they're allowed, prohibited, all that kind of stuff, lists detached single-family homes as a prohibited use in our R24, our R48, our TB, and our CBD zones. However, there are at least five known existing single-family homes within the CBD zone and at least one known existing in the R24 zone, even though they are currently prohibited. Because they were established prior to the zoning prohibition, they have been, are presumed to potentially have nonconforming rights. Patty and Dennis Trevito, who I believe are here in the audience tonight, and I think spoke to you before about this, own one of those homes in the CBD zone. and they wanted to be able to add an addition onto their home, but because their home is non-conforming in that zone, there's, under our non-conforming provisions, 2114-0402, they are not allowed to increase the floor area because the use, their single-family use is prohibited in that zone. So as I mentioned, they came and talked to you. Council agreed to to consider these changes and put this on the Planning Commission's work plan. So just a quick note, what are non-conforming uses? Non-conforming uses by definition essentially are uses that were established legally prior to when the zoning changed, and subsequently because of that they are no longer allowed, so they are now considered non-conforming. And basically they can usually continue to exist as a non-conforming use, usually subject to certain restrictions, including abandonment, this limitation about not being allowed to be increased, and often some other things as well. I'll note the theory of nonconformance is basically why something becomes nonconforming is because by its idea that it's prohibited, it's kind of considered to have some detrimental use in that zone because of the zoning rules that, basically are what made it, or were justified to make it not allowed in the first place. And so we usually have these rules around nonconformance because to require them to cease and or be discontinued often is either considered unfair or in some cases can even potentially be unconstitutional. So that's one of the reasons why we will put these rules around limits on increasing as far as we'll allow them to continue until such time that they might be abandoned. One of the good news about this is, though, in terms of nonconforming, they're not really regulated by the state. And so there is a lot of leeway local jurisdictions have as long as they meet certain state and constitutional limitations, as far as takings and stuff like that. But beyond that, basically, you have lots of flexibility as to how you want to allow non-conforming uses to continue. So the proposed amendment in here, there's two pieces to it. One is under the non-conforming use section, we would add this provision that will cite a new section to be added to the code. And in this case, this is when we're identifying when a non-conforming use can be expanded. Right now, there's only just this one idea, the single-family dwelling unit, which would be able to be expanded a maximum of 1,000 square feet. You would exclude any part of the dwelling that existed on September 24, 2022, when the rules in the CBD made single-family houses non-conforming. And then we'd also have the addition of the floor area would not be able to increase any other or cause any other new nonconformances. So you can expand the nonconforming use itself up to 1,000 square feet, but you wouldn't be able to create anything else. Like, for example, if you happen to be maxed out on your floor area ratio, this would not give you the ability to go beyond what the maximum that the zoning would allow on that in the first place. So that's all I've got. Happy to answer any questions. Again, a proposed motion up there for you.
Councilmember Evans.
Thank you. I am really thankful that the Planning Committee took this on because it is really nice that we can carve this out for people who have been longtime residents in this non-conforming property before it became non-conforming and to allow them to age in place. And so I definitely am for this. I think, it's a handful of properties that are impacted, and allowing people to stay in their residence and be able to remodel it to allow them to age in place, I think is a really important thing for us to take on.
Councilmember Wise.
I echo a lot of the same sentiments that Councilmember Evans said. I also just wanted to clarify, so if we change this would impact about 6 properties overall?
Roughly. I mean, we know of 6 single-family houses, and assuming that they have all have non-conforming rights, it has to always still be verified, but potentially up to 6 properties, at least that we're aware of.
Awesome. Thank you.
Councilmember Taylor.
Yeah, how was 1,000 feet, how was that determined?
Yeah, I mean, so at the Planning Commission, this is what they voted to include in the recommendation. I brought it to them at 1,000 square feet because we used to have in our critical areas ordinance something similar where you could, if you had a house that was non-conforming to a critical areas regulation, you could expand it up to 1,000 square feet. So we kind of had a standard previously in our codes. It's not there anymore, but we'd had it previously, so we just carried that over. Planning Commission decided that that was appropriate for the situation, but council can certainly choose a different number if they want to.
Could we also take into account, let's say they've got a couple acres, I don't know the situation, but if they have a couple acres and they can do an auxiliary dwelling unit, and we're looking at that type of construction, could they do that, have a detached?
These zones do not allow accessory dwelling units. And in the case of the CBD zone, we use residential floor area ratio. We don't use units. So you actually get a certain amount of bulk that you can cut up into whatever you want to cut it up into.
So could the 1,000 feet be a separate dwelling unit or separate?
No.
It has to be attached?
It would, yeah, it has to be part of the unit itself because we don't allow detached single-family houses in these zones. And so to have it as a standalone separate would be adding a new detached single-family house, which is not allowed by those by the zoning code.
We're deviating back to a previous grandfathered standard for the house, right? As long as
grandfathered rights are basically what exists today. They don't, you don't go backwards. You go with what exists today.
But if the residence should turn or sell, it would not be a residence at that point.
Selling the property has no impact on the use itself, the determination of a single family. So what you have to do is actually literally vacate the house or convert it over like to a commercial or some other thing that's not a single family house, and then you would lose those rights.
Okay. Any other questions?
I move to pass the first reading of ordinance number 807, amending chapter 21.14 of the Woodinville Municipal Code by allowing increases to the floor area of non-conforming single-family dwellings.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Would you like to speak to the motion?
I do believe that this is should be fairly low impact since it's only 6 homes. I do like the fact that we are allowing a couple to age in place. Anyone who's looked at current housing understands that part of the complex issue of housing in this area is if you decide to sell, there's a question about where you would move because everything is so expensive. That's one of the reasons we've been working so hard on affordable housing and look forward to having additional options when it comes to affordable housing in Woodinville. I believe this couple is an example of the problem that we're trying to solve, and we're happy that they'll be able to retain their home and be able to speak positively to what we're trying to do in the community.
Seeing no other discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. We're now moving on to business item 14, discussion of potential North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Area Partnership for Recreation Aquatic Facility Property.
All right, good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you for allowing me to present remotely here from sunny Southern California this evening. But just a brief presentation for you on this item this evening. And this, of course, is on the MPRSA Aquatic Community Center Property Partnership. Just a few short slides. Let's see. Okay, so just some brief background. Early 2025, Council directed staff to begin acquisition process for the site to house an MPRSA Aquatic and Community Center that entity was working on. MPRSA, the city identified some potential sites. MPRSA conducted due diligence on that potential site and deemed it satisfactory to proceed last year. The city is now officially closed as of, I believe, yesterday on both parcels. So we own both parcels at this point. Just a reminder for council in the audience, these are the two parcels you can see outlined in yellow and red there. just adjacent to our East Rail corridor and the roundabout that's under construction near downtown. So the discussion for this evening really focuses on a request from MPRSA. At this point, MPRSA has additional funding, grant funding from King County to continue with the design work necessary to eventually go out to a public vote for this project. But before the funds can be released, my understanding is that King County is requiring documentation of the intent to partner between MPRSA and the city, but with the city bringing that property to the project. The discussion this evening is really high-level intent to partner at this point. We don't need to be hashing out the very fine details on it at this point. Really kind of generally talking about whether it's a lease versus sale level discussion for council and their interest on one or both of those. Again, the specifics are to be negotiated in the future. And really just looking for enough conversation and guidance from council that we can document the intent to partner on the project. And that intent would be documented in an MOU, which we'd bring back to council in the near future for approval. Just kind of again at that very high level, and again, this is a non-commitment at this point, but just discussion again so I can incorporate it into an MOU in partnership with MPRSA. Those lease versus sale, as shown in your staff staff reports in your packets, we've kind of just laid out some just brief bullet points on these. At this point, the lease presumably would be a long-term lease. We'd be looking at probably the life at least of that building, somewhere between 30, 50, or even more years. It could be a market rate versus below market. We'd obviously need to have some sort of closeout provisions for when that lease concluded, what happens with the property at that point, the building. Alternatively, the property transaction could be a sale. Again, you'd have a market rate versus below market. There's some kind of policy decisions around this particular route, namely balancing recouping the city's cost versus impact on the viability of the project. And we can certainly answer questions to discuss that more, but that's one thing for council to consider. Just reiterating, the transaction specifics will need to be negotiated in the future. The point of this evening's conversation is not how much per month. Do we want market rate? Do we want below market rate? Least, it's really, are we committed to, and at least the intent is to be committed to bringing this property to this project. The transaction type could be subject to change in the future. So again, non-binding this evening, and the MOU itself would be explicitly non-binding. Again, the purpose is to signal intent to King County to their satisfaction that they're willing to release the additional design funds for the project. So action, none required this evening. It's discussion only. I will take any of that feedback and we'll take that back and work with MPRSA to craft that MOU for future council consideration. So a short presentation, and of course, happy to answer any questions this evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Evans.
Thank you, and thank you for working through this. I know MPRSA has been interested to know what we want. When we went into this as a city, we decided that it was in our residents and our bigger service areas' best interest if we were to bring forth property. And we really wanted to have that property here in Woodinville. I would like to retain ownership of that property and not add that cost into the cost of an ultimate pool, because I think the pool and community center are going to be such a regional benefit to our community that we will be able to reap those benefits in many other ways than simply getting paid back for the land that we've acquired. I also would like to make sure that we have the ability to retain some oversight. I know MPRSA, they own the property where the senior center is, for example, and so they're able to have oversight and make sure that the senior center is run effectively, that it's kept up to date. I would like to see us have not day-to-day ownership of that, but I would like to see us retain that property and have some way to recoup it if it's not being run as a community center and a pool as intended, and that we have some way to make sure that that benefit that we're trying to bring to our community continues to reside within our community. And I would be fine with doing some sort of arrangement like we've done at the Carol Edwards Center, where it's $1 a year or something like that, where it's nominal, because we're not trying to recoup our benefits there, we're recouping it other places, but that we retain the oversight ability to make sure that that benefit stays here in Woodinville.
Councilmember Taylor.
Okay, so is the question, if we were to sell the property, would that go into the bond issue for the total package of Aquatic Center plus property? Would it all be put together?
Presumably, I think that's a fair assumption that if we were to sell the property to MPRSA at market rate, that they would obviously need to raise that capital somewhere, and the most natural place would be increasing that bond levy.
And would the sale of the property coincide with the approval of the bond measure, or would the sale have to happen ahead of the bond measure?
That would obviously have to be structured in the transaction. I would think that it would be contingent on that bond levy passing.
Okay. And all right. Okay, so if it doesn't go through, the city still has property, so it's not a question of losing the property. It might be a question of how best to benefit the community that is doing that, and collecting all the costs so it's amortized over a broader group of beneficiaries. Any idea what the total of that package might be? What's the property relative to the overall construction project? Is it a small percentage?
The MPRSA hasn't progressed design to a point that I could give you an answer on that at this point.
Okay, so
yeah.
The answer is probably the property is going to be a lot less than the cost of the pools that have been proposed in the area. And then the other question I have is for the attorney. Is there a difference between, in a liability standpoint, the city still retaining ownership of the property or turning it over to NPRSA? Does it change our liability in any way when the project goes through? If there's an issue, are we going to be part of the chain of support for that?
If the structure is a lease, liability can be addressed through typical indemnification and defense language in the lease. So it's just a matter of negotiating the terms. I wouldn't say a lease presents any significantly greater liability than ownership.
Okay.
Councilmember Millman.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm hoping council will look to a lease for this for lots of reasons that Councilmember Evans highlighted. At least makes the most sense. We are reaping our constituents or residents are going to reap a benefit of this, and I think it shows good faith in being a good partner with the NPRSA area by forwarding this property that's dead center in the NPRSA area. At least to me has always made more sense in that this will be funded on some type of levy. 10 years go past and there's some financial crisis, the levy doesn't pass. We would have a structure right here in the heart of Woodinville that we'd be able to then operate at that point or do something else with, whatever is appropriate at that time. So at least to me makes the most sense. And I know that there's I want to poke holes in the, I keep hearing something about Kirkland. I know Kirkland tried to pass some type of aquatic center that was much larger than what's being proposed here, so that made it much more expensive. It had a lazy river, much more water area, and it was a much more expensive project. So that is not what's being proposed on our site. We don't have the space for that anyway. So, and then I'm really happy that this is what I enjoy doing as council members. We get to prevent something that's wildly unpopular, like a detention center in Woodinville, and then we get to help people that want to make use of their property. So I enjoy that. And survey after survey shows that a Parks and Recs type service, this type of community center, is at or near the top of what our community wants. And this is the most cost efficient and effective way of delivering that. And I'm strongly in favor of the lease.
Deputy Mayor?
I know that really what we're looking for is a direction for staff. And I would say that having a pool, according to the mayor and all the things that we've gone through, is second to Trader Joe's. So definitely something that we need to do. But the implementation-wise, I think the value of doing it on a lease-type basis allows us a certain level of flexibility that we don't get by selling that property. Number one, it puts it in a detrimental position when it comes time to do the levy. People don't like to see a lot of money go up in taxes, so that will be a reason to reject it, and that would be counter to our objectives. So a pool is something that we definitely want, and in order to make sure that that levy goes smooth, we want to make sure that that cost is down, and we get that by doing it on a lease basis. If that levy goes through and we find out, as Councilmember Millman pointed out, if we find out that they are unable to maintain it for some reason, then we also can take over at that point. There won't be any questions about, well, now it's owned by the NPRSA and we have no control and now we have an empty lot. Not that that is highly likely, but we avoid that scenario. We remove those questions and we retain ownership of it. Maybe Carol Edwards wants to run a pool that gets built there. We don't know what that future may look like, but this gives us some insurances, and we want those insurances in our pocket. The other thing is whether it's $1 or $20, it puts it to where they are doing most of the management of that property. I think that there are some tax implications, and Blank, correct me if I'm wrong, if we transfer that property outside to that other organization, there's some complexities there that I know we would have to manage.
Well, I believe it would still be considered exempt because it would still be public property. Okay. So I don't think there are tax implications.
All things told, though, I still like the level of control and flexibility that we have by leasing versus selling the property.
Councilmember Edwards.
Thank you. Yeah, I also support a lease option here at below market rate. The one thing that I do want to put up is, again, if it does go for the nominal rate of $1, whatever that is an option I also support. But I'm also supportive if we decide of a higher amount that's still far below market rate, where if we do decide that option there, that if we do receive any money from that, that it goes into community programs, such as our community grants we give to the community for programs to serve the people who live here and the people around here. I think one reason to consider that also is because we want the project to be viable. So we want to make sure it doesn't impact the viability of the project. But also our residents are paying more upfront by us purchasing the property with city funds there. And although it is located in Woodinville, which provides a benefit to the residents here, it's also in the center of the NPRSA district. So it benefits the district as a whole being here in Woodinville. So I'll support it if it is $1, but also supporting a little more, but while still being under a market rate to provide a small amount to fund other community recreation in our area here.
Councilmember Evans.
So going along that, I know in the MPRSA, we've taken a look at how most pools are operating on a very lean margin, if not at a loss. So if we do take a look at something more than a nominal rent, I'd really like us to take a look at what the cost projections are for running that and what the rent would do. I'm all for finding more money for community support. We have amazing community engagement and nonprofits around here who do amazing things. I just would not want to see that at the risk of the pool not being financially viable. So I want to put that out there that I'm open to take a look at a range of things, but let's make sure that we are going into it looking at the projected profit and loss and all of the operating costs that are needed in order to make it a viable, vibrant center of our city.
And I will jump in and add my own thoughts here that I would agree with the majority of council that a lease option gives us as a city flexibility in the future. It gives us a lot of opportunities if down the road things don't continue the way they're looking like they should, to make changes and to repurpose that property. And I would support that. Seeing no. Councilmember Millman.
I do have a question. I don't know if it's for city manager or attorney. If we go, it sounds like we're in favor generally, everybody's spoken, or most everybody's spoken in favor of a lease. If we, do we need a vote for this to give you direction? Do we need to make it clear for NPRSA's purposes that we've taken a vote, a public vote for this, or is it just head nods, or what do we need to do at this point?
I can speak to it, Mr. Gantz, and I think I've got enough consensus from listening to council that I can certainly, with some confidence, go to MPRSA and work on an MOU, and that'll come back to council for a formal vote in the near future. So this evening, Mr. Millman, I don't think we do need a vote.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. I think that we have everything we need on that business item. And that moves us to item 8 from the consent calendar, which came down as now, I guess it would be our new 14, 15, I don't know. But we are going to discuss the approval of agreement 26307, transferring ownership of art sculpture to Wooden Creek Village Associates.
Madam Mayor, I can speak just briefly to it as a quick recap. This item was discussed or brought to and discussed by council at its March 17th meeting 3 weeks ago. Got a consensus from council or direction from council to proceed with drafting this agreement as presented in your packet this evening. At issue is the art sculpture that was donated back in 2017 by Wooden Creek Village Associates to the city as part of their development project. When that was donated to the city assumed all the maintenance obligations, and we've been doing periodic, regular light maintenance, I would call it. Since then, we're at the point now where major mechanical components have failed, and would be looking at a repair bill north of $115,000 to make the necessary repairs to restore the mechanical functions of the sculpture. And that was the genesis of the conversation with council, whether we wanted to undertake that $115,000 of repairs or go ahead and exercise the options that were provided for in the original development or donation agreement, wherein we could return the ownership to Wooden Creek Village Associates. That was the option that they had voiced support for and willingness to take over that obligation. And with the hope that it could still continue to be displayed at its current location on 135th Roundabout. Since then, there has been some minor changes among staffing and the organization at Wooden Creek Village Associates. Right now, the representative we had been talking to and who expressed that interest is no longer with the company. We're now working with the attorney, the in-house counsel, and another representative there, and I'm awaiting further guidance from them on this. But that doesn't necessarily need to preclude council from approving this, and it's ready to go, assuming that we get the go-ahead from Wooden Creek Village Associates. Happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Taylor.
So was the artwork part of a development agreement?
That's a great question. I'll have to go back and look at that, council member.
Okay. And if we turn it back to the owner or the person that had the development agreement, the party, then we're out of a piece of art. Do we have any provision to make sure that it is returned to the roundabout?
The agreement
replaced?
Yeah, the agreement as drafted would allow it to continue in the roundabout, and Wooden Creek Village Associates would need to provide notice before it was removed if they decided to do that.
If they decide to move it, do we have any recourse or?
One moment, let me just get through it here. I only spoke to this, and I apologize. I'm just kind of doing this as we're speaking right now. I believe it's just that they need to provide us notice. I don't know, Mr. Ganson, if you recall specifics, but I believe as I'm skimming it right now, it's just providing notice.
I was focused on the first question of whether this was part of the DA, and part of the packet is Resolution 496 and an agreement to accept the donation. So it suggests to me that it was separate from the development agreement. It was a pure donation. And then that agreement specifically contemplated potential return.
That sounds vaguely familiar. It was 10 years ago, but that does sound vaguely familiar if I recall the order of events. And Councilmember, on your second question, I don't not see anything. I know we discussed it with the other party, but I think as it is presented this evening, removal at the discretion of Wooden Creek Village Associates just requires 90 days notice. I don't believe we have any language in there that says we have the option to take it back at that point.
I think that's right.
Councilmember, does that answer your question?
It does.
Any other questions for staff?
I move that the City Council approve Agreement 28307 substantially in the form presented and authorize the city manager to take all necessary action to effectuate said agreement.
Second.
Just a note that it is Agreement 26307 and not 28, but just to clarify for the record. But yes, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion?
Just to make clear, like I just want to read what this says just to make it clear, because I don't know if council members saw this as well, but it just says, in discussions with representatives of Wooden Creek Village Associates, they have indicated their preference would be 3B, which is to relinquish ownership back to Wooden Creek Village with an agreement where Wooden Creek Village Associates is responsible for the ownership and maintenance, but the city agrees to allow its continued installation at the current location on public property. So I think we kind of get a win-win here in terms of they maintain it. We have the art piece, and it sounds like they're working through, the city manager's currently working through the idea of what it looks like if they want to remove that art piece. So I think this is a win-win. I think it's a fantastic art piece. It's just very expensive to maintain, which I guess if you're the owner of Wooden Creek Village, that would fit in with your taste.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor,
Roll
please
call,
say.
please.
Please, roll call vote.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yes.
Councilmember Wise?
Yes.
Councilmember Millman?
Yes.
Mayor Arndt?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
No.
Deputy Mayor Randolph?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1. And that is the end of our business items for this evening. Do we have any public comment? No public comment. Report to the city manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. Just one brief item this evening. While I am in Southern California this evening, I will be on a plane early tomorrow morning back to participate and assist as I can with the local tour with Congresswoman Del Bene and her staff. We're very excited to be welcoming her to Woodinville yet again and giving her a tour of the many projects that we have ongoing and which she has had a large part in help secure funding at the federal level for. So we are excited, and I'm looking forward to helping out with that tour and all of you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Reports of council members. Councilmember Evans.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a busy few weeks, so bear with me as I go through some stuff. First of all, on March 24th, I just want to thank city staff and the Chamber of Commerce for putting together a really valuable business listening session on House Bill 1515 with local businesses about the expanded alcohol areas. We had, I think, about 30 people here, and we were really talking about how that goes into practice. It's really great conversation, and I've been really happy with the conversations that came out of that. On March 26th, I had a 2.5-hour offsite for East Rail Partners, East Rail Regional Advisory Committee. We had a whole visioning session on what's next for East Rail. Lots to come from that. East Rail Partners is our nonprofit partner who helps us as we go after grants and private funding and all sorts of stuff. And so it's a really important engagement for us to be a part of. We've had a number of grand openings, which has been great. And then I just wanted to say that next Monday we have another grand opening for Garlic Crush on Monday the 13th at 11 a.m. just across the street. And next Friday, the 17th, we have a second grand opening at Pacer Propane. So lots happening in the business community. I'm continuing to meet with a lot of small businesses and small groups about how we build out House Bill 1515. And many people are really excited about the watch party that we're doing on June 27th. So just thank you to council. And feel free to join me at any of these grand openings. Thank you.
Councilmember Edwards.
No report tonight, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Councilmember Evans has all the thunder.
Councilmember Wise.
I got to attend Public Spaces meeting a couple weeks ago where they talked about the playground upgrades for the Rotary Park over there. It was super cool presentation. I'm very, very excited for them to bring their suggestions here.
Councilmember Millman.
Just a couple of things. One, I got to listen to the new executive director for Homeward Pet today. And I just want to point out to anybody that might be listening that they are running low on food at their storehouse. They are seeking some donations for that. And then I was able to attend, I don't think we've had a meeting since then, I was able to attend the Woodinville storehouse where we did some work to stock the Woodinville storehouse shelves here about a week and a half ago.
Councilmember Taylor.
Nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. And I'll have to bear with me because I also have a few things to go through this evening. It has been a busy few weeks. The deputy mayor and I had the opportunity last week to sit down with several other cities in the area with the new King County executive, Zachlai, and his staff, and just get a nice introduction to the executive and his staff members, as well as share information about Woodinville, about our needs and our top issues with the county. And it was, I think, I'm going to say, a very hopeful start to a new relationship with the county executive there. And I also was able to meet with our county council member, Sarah Perry, last week to kind of further the discussion, at our last council meeting, we had a presentation from King County Metro that indicated that there was a delay on some of the service routes that we were hoping to see come online at this time. And so our discussion centered around options for getting more Metro service here in the city and opportunities for creative thinking for the World Cup and for getting tourists from Seattle out to Woodinville to experience a wonderful wine country out here. And then this morning, we had a Sound Cities Association mayor's meeting, and one of the issues that was highlighted at that meeting is that the King County Council is considering a transportation benefit district sales tax to benefit rural roads in King County. The sales tax would be applied across the county, and they are debating the option of a pass-through for some of that funding to come back to cities. Our council has not expressed a position on that, so I did not express a position on that, but that is something that we are following. And if you want more information, I'm happy to talk to you in more detail. And that is what I have for this evening.
Motion to adjourn?
Meeting adjourned.